Hello my friends, welcome to my June wrap up. We're going to discuss the 20 books that I read. I need to pull up, oh, you can see my stats here actually. The 5 books that I didn't vlog, I will do like proper reviews, and everything else has been in vlogs. First, I will remind you of all the ratings that I gave in those vlogs. The first one was where I was reading this, and then the books recommended to me by one of the editors. So this is Be Gay, Do Crime, and it is 16 Stories of Queer Chaos. I gave it a 4. I read It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over by Anne DeMarkin, which I gave a 4. The Lava in My Bones by Barry Webster, I gave a 3. I think when I did a little like mini update on TikTok, I said that it was a 4 and I was mistaken. This was a 3. In fact, I said it was barely a 3. And then also a 3, Sisters by Daisy Johnson. Another video I did was where Libby chose my TBR, or the library chose my TBR, and I ended up reading a 5-star of the month, If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. I read A Romance, Only Because It's You by Rebecca Fisha. And I also read Cassandra in Reverse by Holly Smale, and then Blood Over Bright Haven by ML Wang. I didn't tell you my ratings. This one was a 3.75. This one was a 2, and Blood Over Bright Haven was a 4. Then I did a buzzword video, of course. I read Harrow the Ninth, which I gave a 4, and then Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young, I gave a 3. And my final public vlog of the month was where I was reading Bestie's Favorites from a spreadsheet, stats, and the stats served me well. In one case, To Be Taught Fortunate by Becky Chambers was another 5-star, but the rest of them were, well, Anne of Green Gables was a 4 by L.M. Montgomery, and the rest were 3s/3.5. So Wuthering Heights, Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and Kim Jeong, Born 1982 by Cho Nam Ju, translated by Jamie Chang. So that's everything that I officially vlogged for everybody. And then all of these books actually have content, but not in an official review capacity where I just like talk about it for 2 to 3 minutes. So I will do that here. I read Daisy Jones and the Six for a Besties spin-off vlog. This was a book that showed up in that Besties vlog. It was about reading things based on my identities, like Canadians really love this book, Enneagram 8s really love this book, Aries love this book, people in marketing and graphic design love this book. This one is actually one that showed up in all of those categories. Like I could have picked Daisy Jones for the Enneagram or for the Zodiac because it's such a beloved one and it kind of just appeared everywhere. Also, it was in the top 30 of the most mentioned books. So I did a little spin-off reading it. I wasn't sure I was gonna like it. And then I read the first couple chapters and I was convinced I would like it. So I went forward with it and then I ended up giving it a 2. I've been grappling with my feelings about liking fame adjacent books. I never really have in the past, but recently I read a book that revolved around music and I thought like maybe because everybody loves this could be my moment to love something that's so popular. I just thought this was so incredibly dry and dull and kind of palatable, which I'm realizing makes the most sense for a book that is so beloved by so many people. Is it's not going to necessarily take an extreme angle or extreme stance, but I figured because I've heard people say that this is full of people who aren't really that likable. We have this band, and obviously when you're following this type of career, people are going to break up and fall apart and cheat and do drugs, and I just wanted to see what kind of redeemable qualities the people had, or if it was gonna go really unlikable, and I wanted it to go so much further. This is about a band in the 60s and 70s and their rise to fame, their first tour. We have Daisy Jones, who grew up being really beautiful and beloved, and she has this natural talent and she wants to do what she wants to do. She wants to be independent. She wants to write her own music. She wants to be taken seriously, and she finds that opportunity through the Six, this band that's already established, and we get a good amount of them at the beginning. Their growing pains, them getting along, but it is told in a documentary style interviews, and it's a fun like gimmick for the book for sure, but that's really the only thing that was good about it. I think there were such big decisions made in here and such extreme moments, but it never felt like that. It felt like things were happening to very cardboard characters, and I never felt invested in anything that was going on, when if it was real people in real life, I absolutely would. So I ended up really struggling through this. I don't really like the ending kind of reveal explanation, but I understand. I am the unpopular opinion with that. So let's move on to something I think I liked more than the average person, and that is All the Water in the World by Erin Kafal. I read this for my Besties book club. We do a seasonal thing. Right now we're moving on to The Compound, but this was our last read. And it's about this small family. We have one main character who's like 13, I think, and it's in the near future. It's climate fiction, science fiction, where it imagines the world when the ice caps have melted and the world is flooded, and this small family is trying to find safety. They're also dealing with the grief of losing one of their family members. It talks about art and the preservation of history. They're originally staying in a museum and trying to protect the artifacts, and then things get too dangerous. There's a lot of storms. The water increases and they have to go find safety other places. And they find a couple different communities to go to. I gave this a 3.5. Did I say that? I know I said I liked it more than the average person. A 3.5 isn't a fantastic rating, but the book club generally did not like this one. It didn't land for people, and I had the same issues that everyone else did as far as the pace. I just don't think that this was a story that could have been told in 290 pages. It needed to be like 600. It introduced different groups of people and the dynamics of like who was going to help them, who was going to hinder them. There was some danger, there was some escaping, and there was just too many things trying to happen at the same time. But what I really liked about this is the idea that humanity is going to be the same regardless of condition, even in the future when you think things will have changed. Everything is pretty much the same. There's still going to be people who take advantage and manipulate folks. There's still going to be people who are really focused on community and want to help anyone that they can. I thought it was an interesting read, not one that I would necessarily recommend. Then I read 2 book club books this month. I said last month that this was technically in my stack because I was sure I was going to read it before the end of the month, and then I just put it off for a couple days because I wanted to be really fresh for the live show. So both of these live shows happened in the month of June. Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazing by Kylie Lee Baker was a proper horror, which I feel like we don't read a ton. Like a lot of times it ends up being way more fantastical, or it ends up being way more in the thriller or mystery area. This one felt horror. I ended up quite liking this one. I gave it a 4. It follows Cora, and at the beginning of the book, her sister is killed. She's experiencing hate crimes. It's the early days of COVID. She's called a bat eater and then pushed in front of a train. And so obviously she is reeling from that, but still having to go on with her normal life and exist and work a job and function in society. And she believes she's being haunted by these ghosts. But also there's this cultural element where the ghosts are real and they're said to be real. People in her life are like, the ghosts are real, you need to feed them or whatever, or they're feeding on you, but she doesn't know if she can really trust what she's seeing because she's been so traumatized. She also works as a crime scene cleaner, and she's noticing an increase in crimes against East Asian women. And at the scenes, there are these really gruesome descriptions of bats. They seem to be at every single scene. And again, it's something she doesn't know if she can trust or not. And they've really delivered in the horror description. I talked about in the live show that I really appreciate where the book went. And like after the fact, I get that this is how the story had to go. But there are certain things that I felt a little unsatisfied with in the plot that kept it from being a full 5. And then this one I thought was going to be the campy, quirky horror after the more extreme one, and it wasn't. And this turned out to be more of the horror-tinged fantasy that I've been trying to get away from, but that's okay. I gave Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Marie Griffin a 3.5, and my explanation for that rating is that I wanted it to be more camp and more fun and more satirical and be truly the same kind of tone as Little Shop of Horrors, which is a movie that I love and we just rewatched as a besties membership thing. It was so fun. Or I wanted it to be like way more intense and gruesome and like have really descriptive scenes. There was a couple where the plant is like consuming people, but not quite enough for me. Also, there was a little too many like people and perspectives, but the writing was incredible and the themes were so good. It's essentially about this abusive, manipulative relationship. The plant becomes sentient and he convinces people to help him feed on people. And you're reading mostly from his perspective, which I didn't even know about my own book club read that that's what it was. So it's as if you're in the head of this abusive man for a lot of the book, and it's people fighting against him and some little love stories on the side. And I thought it was an interesting time, not my favorite. And then lastly, my other favorite read of the month was Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang, which I was really worried about because conception, you know, like motherhood, fertility, and I find that like some pregnancy and early motherhood books really don't work for me. Most of the time they don't really work for me. So just the title had me a little bit weary, and I didn't fully know what this was going into it. I just knew that I loved a book from this author before. So I picked it up and I read it also for Gabby's book club live show discussion. And it's about the pitch of the book. I read the synopsis like after the fact, and the second half of the synopsis is definitely the most intriguing, but it is the smallest portion of the book, so I just want people to go in with the right expectations. The majority of this story is these two friends who both do art. They get inspired by each other, do similar artwork. It's a little bit like gruesome and weird and body horror vibes and very science fiction-y. We're in the future and there's this technology that they also learn about, not related to their art, but like adjacent, where you can like download your thoughts or import someone else's thoughts and kind of share a mind with somebody. And so that is a running theme, like this technology throughout the story, but it's mostly about their friendship and their dynamic over the years. And again, I got worried because these really destructive friendship stories I'm kind of over. That's not my favorite thing to read, when someone is obsessed and stalking and trying to steal the life of their friend. That's not totally what it was. We really got to see them building their own separate lives and families, and eventually they come back together because there is this technology, and one of them decides it would be an interesting thing to participate in with the other. And it deals with a lot of moral dilemmas. It got weird for sure, and it was a very slow build, and I think the payoff was great. I gave it a 4.5. I've been thinking, is it a 5? But I don't know for sure, so I'm sticking with this current rating. So that's everything that I read, all the reviews that you might have missed out on elsewhere. And now I have a couple of superlatives. The first one is the best book that I read of the month. And now I have this giant stack I need to shuffle through. That's To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is science fiction. It takes place on a little spaceship. This tiny crew is investigating planets and their bacteria and their creatures, and it was just very warm and inviting. Best sequel, I think I only read one sequel, and that was Harrow the Ninth. So this was a very ambitious book to come after Gideon, and I don't know if I'm going to continue in the series, but people have been trying to convince me. Best audiobook, I don't know if this was the best audiobook objectively, because I didn't listen to a lot of these exclusively on audio. Hi, I'm still here. But if you're already planning to read If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English, which I definitely recommend, like it was a 5, I would say the audiobook is the way to consume this one, because some people have said they found it confusing how it goes back and forth between perspectives and doesn't necessarily identify who's speaking right at the beginning, but the audiobook does a great job of establishing that. Biggest surprise, I honestly don't think I have an answer. There's no book that I went into thinking that I wouldn't love that I loved. These two, I would have probably said they're 4-star predictions, and they both ended up being 5, so I think that has to be my surprise. But any of like the 4 stars that I look at, they're not these moments where I'm like, oh my god, I thought I would hate that one. So biggest disappointment though, I definitely have an answer for. Sadly, Eat the Ones You Love, just because I thought this was going to be a 5. My last Sarah Maria Griffin was a 5. Obviously, I picked it for a book club, so I thought it would be a 5, and it was just okay. And then I think Spells for Forgetting, because for some reason, I just assumed this was going to be a 5-star, like, little magical island romance, and it let me down. Then an author I want to read more of, Adrienne Young. This did not turn me off from this author. I want to try again and see if something else of hers could really work for me. And then another favorite author of the month is Ling Kwang, because this is now my second like 5-star or almost 5-star from her, which means if I read one more, she is officially an all-time favorite author. The book that I would recommend the most, I'm gonna say only because it's you, because this has a strangely low average rating on Goodreads, and there's no reason for it. I gave it a 3.75, which is what I give like all romance. So if you love any of the romance that I've read in the past couple months and given it a 3.75, I don't see why you wouldn't love this one. And then the number one thing I guess I would recommend is Anxious People, because I read this because of its popularity and I see it. I don't think there's anything that I would disrecommend this for. It wasn't my perfect book, but I can see why it's a crowd pleaser. And then most beautiful, honestly, it's all of the horror. I think horror covers this year are really doing their thing. The consuming and the eyeballs and the bats and the florals. I just think these are all perfect. Lastly, favorite character. I really don't think I have one. So I'm just gonna say Anne of Green Gables, because you can't argue with me that Anne is not a fun character to read. But yeah, there wasn't really any characters this month that I was like, oh my god, I love following them, love their energy, see myself in them. I just didn't have that experience like at all. Even the books that I gave 5s, it's about the plot, it's about the writing, it's about the setting. It's not about the specific people in the stories. In fact, there are books that I liked in spite of the characters this month. So that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear what your favorite book of June was. Let me know down below. I hope you had major successes. I wish us the best of luck for the season to come. And I'm just glad I ended the month with a couple 5s because there have been some droughts this year. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.